Welcome back to Off Key. This is Branjord. I'm here with my co-host, Shannon Brunet. We're back to Chapter 3 of Episode 1, still talking to Mr. Owen Sartori. Today's topic is about Slayer.
Slayer!
Yep, you heard it. Slayer. And other metal bands that you might put together with Slayer. I hope you enjoy and stuff.
Just so people know, we're in a studio in St. Paul. It's a private studio tonight. We might be moving around as we do this show, but tonight's in St. Paul. And Allie is on a couch, and Owen's on a stool in front of me, and I'm in the captain's chair by the shit.
I'm in the captain's chair by the shit. That's the best spot in the whole house.
And that's just in case you musicians are wondering what the professionals use as terminology in the studio.
Mm-hmm.
That is what we call it.
What's next, Shannon?
We're going to talk about Slayer.
I am not a huge Slayer fan, so I don't know a whole lot.
That's okay.
But I'm just going to pretend like
It's
I do.
not okay.
You know? I'll try to play along.
I think the reason why we kind of brought this up to bring it down to a sober, somber mode is the fact that Jeff, one of the guitarists from Slayer, recently passed away.
Right.
And I think that's why we wanted to do a segment on this, was kind of to not only honor him passing and talk a little bit about Slayer, what Slayer's meant in Owen's life, my life, and just also kind of talk about Slayer in general as a music entity within the music industry, I guess, if that makes sense.
What was the first memory you have of hearing Slayer? And what was your impression off the bat?
No, this is great. I'm on a school bus in middle school. I think it's maybe my 8th grade year. And I was the first kid in my class to get a cassette of Rain and Blood.
Awesome cassette.
It was earth-shattering, you know. And I had at this point, Metallica was the heaviest thing that I had listened to, and then Slayer comes along, and just shatters my view of how aggressive music could actually be. And you know, I got to say, when you're a 14-year-old male, aggressive is all you want. You want the most aggressive, powerful, badass music you can get your hands on it. And at that point, Slayer, Rain and Blood was that. It's the most aggressive record anybody had put out up to that point.
You know, one of my favorite parts about doing this show with Allie is the fact that you're right, for a 14-year-old male, that's exactly what I want. But Allie, being as girl as it gets sometimes, at 14 was probably also all she wanted was aggressive music.
Yeah, that's true. I was a huge punk rocker back in the day.
So
hold on. No, as long as we're discussing that you were a punk rocker, please tell me, what, in your mind, what is punk rock?
Sex Pistols, Black Flag, The Runaways, Replacements.
Okay, you're all right. You can start.
I'm all right. I know my shit, man. I'm not talking about
Blink-182.
Green Day.
No. I was all into Black Flag and Minor Threat and all the hardcore stuff.
The Descendants is
man.
favorite.
See, my partner here knows her shit. That's what I like.
I was legit back in the day with the punk stuff. I still like it, but I have a wider mind.
Well, and so I'm actually a little bit surprised that Slayer didn't hit you quite as hard, because the punk world,
right? It falls in there sometimes.
It wasn't quite as dark. It was every bit as angry. When the punk world turned into the metal world. At least, you know, from my point of observation, Slayer and Testament was another one. Slayer, Testament, Anthrax, Metallica. Okay, if you want to pick the 4.
I would honestly throw my boys in Megadeth in there.
Well, Megadeth. Yes. No, I'm sorry. Forgive me. Yeah, Megadeth, and then we're into secondary territory.
Suicidal Tendencies,
Exodus.
Oh God.
And one of my favorites, which actually ended up being a really an interesting connection, was Flotsam and Jetsam.
Flotsam and Jetsam was a great band.
With
different bass player on every single album.
Well, with Jason Newsted, kicking ass, and then ended up in Metallica. I mean, what a great transition that was. Missing, of course, Cliff Lee Burton. Back to Slayer.
Your first thing was on the bus. Mine, believe it or not, I was a little bit of a latecomer when it comes to the metalheads to Slayer, because already in 7th grade I was listening to I Am the Man. I remember it was one of my first cassette tapes I ever got was I Am the Man by Anthrax. And I don't think my parents realized what it was that they got me for Christmas. And what they got me was me under my headphones for days straight screaming obscenities into my pillow because I didn't want them to hear it. And it was one of those things where I got to, my first exposure to Slayer was on Headbangers Ball. Good old Ricky Rackman and all that kind of stuff. And I used to stay up. It was one of the only nights my parents just didn't care how long I was up because I got to watch Headbangers Ball and I would record it. And suddenly, Season in the Abyss came on, and I was just floored. And then when War Ensemble came out, and I went out, I'm like, I gotta get this tape at the time.
Tape.
And I went to go get Seasons of the Abyss, and I picked out the wrong one, and I got South of Heaven thinking that it had all the songs on it, and it didn't. I listened to that, and I was like, this is amazing.
Yeah, I was going to say, don't you dare complain about
I was
accidentally getting South of Heaven.
And so I went back, and I'm thinking, like, I got to get that Seasons of the Abyss thing, and I must have been not too smart because I grabbed the Rain and Blood one because that's the one that was there. And I was just like, okay, this is just some of the coolest stuff I've ever listened to.
Look, Angel of Death, just to put it out there, if there was an anthem for 80s death metal, speed death metal, Angel of Death was that.
Absolutely. 100%.
And, and what's tough about it is Jeff Hanneman, you've got two amazing guitarists, but for not at all for the reason that you think. Jeff Hanneman and Kerry King.
Yep.
Jeff Hanneman and Kerry King were, as I understand it, two of the least schooled musicians in the world when they formed this band.
They're in high school and just kind of put it together, from what I understand.
And this, how fast can I move my right hand, and how many terrible notes can I put on the left hand, and just make it just the weirdest, most obnoxious sort of soloing. And but funny enough, it resonated with their crowd, and suddenly
over time you play guitar for that long, suddenly you're better and better better, and then the phenomenal guitarists layered on, playing some very melodic stuff in their songs.
They ended up doing, exactly, the stuff that even the guys from Iron Maiden might be happy about.
Yeah,
it was that good of stuff. And so losing Jeff, it's hard to imagine how two guitarists with that kind of chemistry, how do you pick up the pieces?
Yeah.
And I'm not sure how they're going to do it.
How has Slayer affected the music world, and do you think they belong in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame?
I think that it would be tragic if they didn't, although I also think that they could not give a shit less that they're in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
They've never done it for the accolades.
Right. I frankly don't know. I don't know how their sales stack up, right?
Yeah.
Clearly not to the extent that Metallica, even Anthrax, they didn't have that kind of commercial success, at least as far as I know. But that doesn't mean that their influence shouldn't warrant some sort of an accolade like that.
I agree with you. How many metal shows have you gone to, and someone's just metal sign in the air yelling Slayer,
and then that every guitar player sound checks. Well, not everyone, but I don't think I've ever been able to do it.
If someone's sound checking with Rain and Blood, they're pretty fucking cool. But it's one of those things where people yell Slayer like every, I've seen top 40 type shows and someone's in the audience just Slayer.
That was the greeting.
That exactly.
Remember when you weren't allowed to answer the question, do you like Slayer, with a yes or a no? The only acceptable answer is just screaming Slayer. As loud as you can.
Yeah, it was like, do you like Slayer? Slayer! I guess you like Slayer.
Where does Slayer fit in history of music, and how will they be remembered?
There's no way for us to know, but there are good indicators. When we think about music from the 60s and very early 70s, who are we thinking about? Do we think about the Beatles, or do we think about Badfinger? Some people might argue, wrongly, that Badfinger had a more profound impact on the music world than the Beatles did. But again, you're talking about a popular genre.
Yeah.
For example, you go to guitar players like Django Reinhardt, who nobody really knows, but guitarists know who Django was, and they know of his crippling illness, and they know that the guy did everything he did with two fucking fingers, and it was unbelievable. in the same token, there are some people that will say, well, you've heard of Metallica, but have you ever heard of Slayer? And I think they'll always have to be in the shadows. They'll always, but I venture to guess that they will be comfortable in the shadows.
Yeah, I think so too. I think you're right on there.
Last question on this segment. What is your favorite Slayer song?
Angel of Death.
That was a really quick answer.
That is the
No
easiest
hesitation.
question you could have given me.
And that's wrapping up Chapter 3 with Owen Sartori. Now we're going to spotlight King Moon Racer and their song Night City. You cannot find it on iTunes or Spotify, but just Google them. You'll find it.
You taking a piece of my love, baby. You taking a piece of me. You don't understand a single word that I say. How can you misunderstand me? Daylight comes, erases me. I love the night, I love the city. Sunrise is the death of me. I love the night, I love the city. Taking a piece of my heart, baby. Physically taking a piece of meat. I don't understand a goddamn thing that you say. How the hell are you gonna understand me?